Finally, Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen arrives on the PC. It took fucking long enough, Capcom. Did you get one person to work on it? That one and only poor bastard that made the suggestion to make a PC port called Jeff? Wait a minute. I've just said the forbidden words, haven't I? PC port. Oh god, not another one. Actually, in comparison to most PC ports these days, it is pretty well done. It's certainly responsive and runs well, but does have the menus that are pretty much holding up a sign saying I'm all console, baby, like it or not. At least it isn't another Fartman Arkham Blight, though. Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen is an open-world Japanese RPG with Western influence, originally released on the PS3 and Xbox 360 back in 2012. The game includes all the DLC that was released back in 2013. It is certainly a baby of a threesome consisting of Monster Hunter, Dark Souls and Skyrim, with its open world design and giant monsters, but we will get back to those later. The story of Dragon's Dogma goes as follows. You are a fisherman from the western town of Casardis. A dragon then comes along and starts destroying shit. You, being the idiot you are, attempting to stop the dragon by poking him with your fishing rod a few times and end up giving him a splinter in the foot. The dragon gets pissed off, tells you are the chosen one, and takes your heart, eats it, and turns you into everyone's Gofer. The Arisen. So you set out on your journey to find the dragon, slay it, and get your heart back. From here on in, you become everyone's slave. Apparently you're the only one that can actually get shit done in the lands of Gransys. Not to mention eventually becoming the Duke's personal errand boy. The whole dragon thing gets pushed aside like a neglected child for ages as you are shoveled a much more boring and typical RPG story. I also need to mention Capcom should never ever attempt to write romance. It makes watching Twilight seem actually watchable in comparison. One scene in particular goes something like this. "Oh, who are you? The Arisen? Oh my god, I love you, I want your babies." It is fucking excruciating to watch. Overall, the story is a bit bullshit. It has its moments every once in a while, but ends up falling flat on its face like the coyote from the Roadrunner falling off a cliff. The most interesting and unique mechanic in Dragon's Howlman is that of pawns. Pawns are a race of human-like beings that are controlled by an Arisen. Without an Arisen, they are basically vegetables that stand there drooling, unable to make their own decisions. This allows the player to create their very own pawn, along with hiring others. Now this is where I start to feel a little bit dirty, as essentially this is literally one step away from virtual pimping. Each player can hire out their pawn to another player for a price. They can also hire any other player's pawns to fight for them, and send them returning with a slap on the bum saying good game. Upon returning, they can bring back new items along with experience on combating monsters and locations. Of course, during this time you can still play the game as normal. Naturally, this leads to players tarting up their custom pawn as much as possible, making the best eye candy that they can and naming them something like Nut Gobbler or Watermelon Juggington. If I had thought of it at the time and known all of this, I would have called my pawn Dog's Bollocks the Second. Why the second, you might ask? Because I am obviously the number one Dog's Bollocks of Gransys. The game is certainly bad at explaining things to you, and often you end up doing things you would have otherwise done differently. The pawns are pretty good combatants, but other than that they have the intelligence of a fart in a jar, not to mention verbal diarrhea. The bastards never shut up. They're always coming out with something like, "All paths seem to lead to Grand Soren. Falling from this height is certain death," and "What a large tree." That is brilliantly observant of you, my good pawn, but we have been to Grand Soren and passed that tree about 50 times by now. Each time you saying exactly the same fucking thing. One thing I will say I love about Dragon's Doggy or Ma is that when it says it is an open world RPG, it pretty much does what it says on the tin. It allows you to take whatever path you like, but that can lead to being bitch slapped by powerful enemies. Each area has enemies which are technically a certain level, and it's easy to roam into a place where enemies are far more powerful than you are. This leads you to getting your ass ripped off and handed back to you after becoming some bandit's bitch for the third time. This leads me to problem number 2. You often get quests that lead you to areas that are above your level. In one instance I had to bring an old fart from the beginning town to the very west side of the map. This was really early on in the game, and both my party of pawns and I absolutely got murdered numerous times attempting to escort the old bastard to his location. If we weren't brutally murdered by a band of bandits, skewered by reptilians, or piled on by a group of hobgoblins, it was a big fuck off chimera who just happened to be wandering the woods. And just as we reached the destination to top it off, a fucking fire drake decides to appear, giving me a suntan to the extreme. Did I forget to mention that Griffin also decided to go and sit on the old fart once, killing him instantly? Which brings me on to bosses. Attempting to take on a Cyclops early game is often like attempting to kill it by spanking it, unless of course you are a ranged character. With that you can simply shoot the thing in the eye from a distance where your pawn screams at you 100 times, "It ill likes fire." You can change your vocation at certain NPCs at any time, which is simply changing your character class. If you prefer to take a more smashy wacky style of combat, you can climb up a boss. That doesn't sound as easy as you might think, as it uses up your stamina along with the monster generally flailing about like Ace Ventura around bats trying to get you off of it. Ogres are a bitch too, as they have a habit of jumping onto their back with you on it, making you tomato puree to go with their adventure stew for the day. When climbing, very often you can end upside down, clinging onto the monster's bollocks, not literally. In such an instance, attempting to move up can go either way. You can end up climbing up Nipple Highway or Bum City, becoming the creature's new toilet paper. You can gain materials from murdering innocent animals, killing monsters, collecting herbs, searching highlighted areas, mining, and so on. I found myself collecting everything I came across like an OCD squirrel before winter. The game contains a fuck ton of quests too that keeps you busier than the street hookers during a political party's night out. As for plot progression, it is nearly impossible to tell what quests lead to the storyline going forward. In fact, I actually ended up completing a plot quest earlier than I should have and did a later quest first. It pretty much ruined the mystery behind the quest for me, as I had already a fair idea of what was going on. A masquerade mask is not going to hide your identity, sir. Perhaps those amazing golden locks, very distinct armour, and big fuck off tower shield on your back might just give it away. Honestly, you are a grown man. Putting your hands up to your face saying, "I can't see you, you can't see me," isn't going to work. Materials and enemies respawn at rapid rates, making the game quite action-packed, and there's never being shortage on things to harvest if you're getting ready for hibernation. The game doesn't have a beam me up Scotty mechanic as such, but with the DLC Dark Arisen, the player can teleport between major locations infinitely, with a stone that can be found within their storage. Additional beam me up Scotty locations can be made by the player by finding and placing port crystals where they want on the map for easy access to locations. I will say one thing, the more I played the game, the more I got this haunting feeling that just wouldn't go away. Much like a stalker. Then all of a sudden it came to me. You see, the game feels at times more like it was originally designed as an MMORPG as opposed to a single player RPG. This is most apparent in side quests such as kill X number of fluffy bunnies and find X number of wolf testicles. The monster respawn rates are also pretty high and at times unpredictable, that is not including the whole pawn system. If that is actually the case of it originally being an MMORPG idea, at least they didn't scrap the project like EA or Ubisoft. If it was EA or Ubisoft, they would have killed that cow if they couldn't milk it at least another 2 times. Just look at the anorexic state of Assassin's Creed, for fuck's sake. All you get out of that cow these days is baby formula. If Capcom are to make a sequel to this, I can really see it being an MMORPG of some kind. It certainly feels like testing the water for one. Despite the shit I give it and the few problems that the game has, I can't say I've had a horrible time with it. In fact, I have quite enjoyed my time in Gransys. It's a bit of a love-hate relationship where I have to call it every name under the sun once in a while. Then later I grovel apologising and saying how much I love it. I love being able to go pretty much everywhere, pick up near enough everything, and being able to craft it into something, even if I do get ripped a new one. Not to mention wanting to strangle a pawn for telling me how large the same tree is for the 100th time. The giant Dark Souls hype bosses are entertaining and fun too. It does what the likes of Oblivion and Skyrim didn't do, and that is there is always something to do and it's easy to find the source of something to do. NPCs have indicators that they have a quest or quests can be found on notice boards in the inn at a town. You don't have to talk to every person in town asking if they're alright like a bored psychologist. When exploring the land, there's enough quick moments of action to stop it becoming boring, unlike in Skyrim or Oblivion, where it often felt more like plucking your overgrown nose hairs out. It was painful yet necessary. Overall, the story may be flatter than the cat after your mum sat on it, but I was honestly too busy doing other things that I didn't really give a shit about it. The only time I give a rat's arse about the plot is if it gave me more chores to do. It is a game I would happily play a second time, as it truly shines in combat and exploration as opposed to Capcom's general storytelling. Even if it does feel a bit like an MMORPG, such as oldies like Legend of Mir or Metasoma at times, it still gets a 7 out of 10 for me. It's a hard game, and its price may feel a bit steep for a game that is technically nearly 4 years old and may not be the most tarted up title in existence. Nevertheless, it is a game that will provide you with far more hours of gameplay than the price tag, assuming you're not looking for 1 hour per 10 cents. It may start off slow, but once you get into it, you'll need to call Gordon Freeman and his crowbar to pry your grip from it.